Richard, I always enjoy our conversations and really excited about this one today. We're going to talk about something that's really at the heart of everything, and that's communication. The power of communication, what happens when you have miscommunication. I would argue that is typically the cause of most conflict is miscommunication or things being misunderstood. But from a people lens and from a leadership lens, being a great leader means being a great communicator. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's been said, Carson. First of all, thanks for having me back on and talking
Of
with me
course.
again. And I love our conversations, my friend. But it's been said before that you cannot become a great leader without being a great communicator. I don't know how true that is, but I do know that most great communicators are good leaders, and most great leaders are, by necessity, good communicators. For instance, if I ask you, how did you become a good communicator? What were some of the steps that made Carson a good communicator?
Well, I'd be remiss not to, give some credit to God for giving me
For
the
sure.
ability to talk fast and to, but I think part of this too is the listening component. I think it's interesting when you look back over your time and your career. I had some inherent talents that I was able to bring to the table, but it wasn't until I realized the value of really listening and understanding why I was talking, what questions I was asking, what I was trying to uncover, and really, it's trying to understand the why of everyone that you come in contact with. Once you know that, and once you understand what looks like a win to those people and how you can best seek to serve those people, that is ultimately what the outcome, the desired outcome of my communication is.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with you because the very first step in communicating is listening. And most people think it's using your mouth in communicating. I think people have lost the art of that first impression because I think those first impressions still matter because people decide within those first 12 to 18 to 20 seconds what they think about you. And we got to realize that we're communicating probably long before we get in the room. And certainly we're communicating and I know you talk a lot to salespeople, but within the first few seconds of getting in the room, we're communicating.
Couldn't agree more. And it's interesting because you and I have talked before about branding. I think a lot of times now your reputation can precede you. How is your brand communicating to somebody before you even speak to them? I find it interesting now. I get into a lot of conversations. People will reach out to me. It could be a customer executive. It could be someone within my organization or somebody in the sales and sales leadership ecosystem that knows a fair amount about me before we've even spoken. And I think that's a really important element of our branding is what's your branding communicating to people before you even speak. But you're so right about that element of that first impression because it's interesting. I mean, fair or unfair, perception is reality. And what people perceive or gather from you and how you conduct yourself, how you show up, how you seek perspectives, how you read the room, or frankly, when you choose not to do those things or you don't know how to do those things yet, all of those things are going to define your success when it comes to communication. And ultimately, that's where conflict comes in. I believe strongly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Richard, that a lot of folks, they don't show up with any intention of malice, but they fail to set the foundation of trust and transparency with the people that they're seeking to serve. That could be colleagues, that could be leadership, that could be customers. And I think that's the key element is you've got to show up looking for that ability to seek to serve and read the room. We talk a lot about situational fluency, knowing exactly how to operate in each individual scenario instead of showing up reading off a script or trying to follow a template or a process, be a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Human beings. I talk about that a lot instead of just a human doing, being a human being and
Yeah.
showing up that way. And when I talk about communication, it seems like more and more I have a tendency to talk about confidence. It's not the opposite of humility. A lot of people think that having confidence, you're not uh, you don't show humility if you have confidence, but I disagree. I think there can be humility in confidence. And one thing I've noticed right off the bat from you, Carson, is that you use your voice. You have confidence in your voice, and it shows in your voice and your body language. And that is communication. You communicate. I tell people that you can have a monotone body language, and that shows up in a monotone voice. And you've got to get rid of the monotone body language, and that's your communication starts coming across in a powerful voice and a powerful presence.
Well, thank you. Being humble doesn't mean being meek. I think you can be humble, and confidence is like a muscle that you develop, over time and over experiences, and frankly, just showing up, being mindful, being present, sitting in ambiguous situations with your teams, with your colleagues. These are the types of things that develop that muscle. Being able to communicate really comes down to providing clarity and focus. It comes down to being authentic. I often share, and I know we've talked about this before. I often share the experiences that I've had, or where I've been in situations where I've been down and out. And frankly, it's a lot easier. As you develop that muscle, you develop confidence even in unclear situations. You develop that ability to pivot and to react and respond effectively. The last thing I would say around communication is that being able to communicate empathetically. Because a lot of times that is what, when you show up, not looking to solve people's problems, but looking to, again, listen and hear where someone is and really sit in that moment with them, whether it's allowing them to vent, or even allowing them the space to arrive at a conclusion themselves. Those are the types of things that really help. If you communicate properly, crisply, and with a focus and clarity, those are the types of things that really drive collaboration. They boost morale, and ultimately, that's what drives success.
We were sharing back and forth about our love for books, and I shared Joe Buck's book with you because he's a storyteller, and
Yeah.
he tells stories about right here in St. Louis. And I think that's one of those keys, Carson, that is often forgot about in being a leader and a communicator. We have to make the complex simple. And we do that through that art of storytelling. I know the Tom Cruise movie, what is it? Cocktail, right? You like that movie, and the
Love that movie.
producer and tells that story. And being that storyteller, you can make the complex simple. And that's a huge part of being a communicator.
What I think is amazing about this is, you know, communication bolsters credibility. And so when you're willing and able to talk to people in a way where you're vulnerable to the right degree, and you're able to show, hey, look, I've been there. I've been laid off multiple times. I've missed my goal. I've had scenarios where I was 1 foot out the door. I've lost deals. I've gotten kicked in the teeth a number of times where I didn't deserve it. But hey, I'm still here, and I've learned from those experiences. And not only that, but I've taken those learnings, and I continue to assimilate that into my arsenal. And the difference between me and maybe somebody else that's had a lot of those same experiences is I refuse to stay on the mat. I get up every time. And so I think what we're ultimately trying to do, Richard, with our communication is we want to relate.
Mm.
We're humans. We're hardwired to desire connectedness, and there's no better way to do that than with communication. And again, effective communication is that two-way street. It's not just showing up to tell our story. You and I were talking even before this, and it's not about showing up just to tell my story to you. It's how do
Mm.
we find these commonalities so that I can learn from you. I genuinely, every time you and I speak, and we've spoken a lot of times that haven't been recorded. I wish we had, honestly, because so many good gems come out of it. But what I find every time we speak is I come away with all of these things like, oh my gosh, you've given me documentaries and books to really dive into. And it makes me better as a person because I think more about, hey, how do I strengthen my strengths? How do I sharpen my axe? How do I continue to establish more credibility, and how do I become a better communicator? These things are key.
Carson, I have people come to me and ask, how do I become a better communicator? What can I do? What are the key things to become a better communicator? And 95% of the time, I give this piece of advice and it doesn't get followed through. I tell people to record themselves and watch themselves back. You and I are podcasters, so we have to watch ourselves back. We don't have a choice. We will watch this back and we will tear ourselves apart. That we're our worst critics. We will give ourselves feedback. We don't need somebody else to give us critical feedback. We will watch this back and give ourselves critical feedback. We'll say, I move my hand too much or I scratch my nose. Whatever the feedback is, we will be the first one to give it. But if people will watch or listen to themselves back, they will give themselves feedback. And that is the best way to become a better communicator. And you fine tune and you tweak and you change some things. You do this hand motion next time, or you say it with a little bit more confidence this time. And you learn each and every time. I promise you, if you look at the very first podcast you ever recorded on LinkedIn, you will say, oh my goodness, look how far I've grown.
Yeah, that's for darn sure. You hit on a couple of really interesting things there, and first off, I agree. Often we're our own worst critic, and I think what's interesting is you're a lot more likely to listen to the feedback if it's coming from yourself. And as
Mm.
painful or as hard as it can be sometimes to watch these things, I hate watching myself back or listening to myself. But the thing that I would say in that token is we're always on a quest to evolve and get better at these things. And the other thing I would tell the audience here today is your story matters. And I think the
Ooh.
quicker you can realize that your story matters, somebody's going to benefit from it. That's when you start to embrace some of these things around branding. I know you and I spend a lot of time coaching and training about personal brand. And what's the biggest thing people push back on? It's, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to do video or podcast or blog. And I don't know what to write. I don't know what to do. The trick is just do it. And,
Absolutely.
to your point, episode 1 versus episode 100, you're going to continue to evolve your craft. And that's what ultimately leads toward mastery. And I think that's the really important part around that. Realize, first off, your story matters. It's going to resonate with somebody. So communicate it and do it in a way where you're creating conversation. It all goes back to communication. You're trying to create conversation. And that's ultimately what I started doing when I started podcasting. And frankly, it's gone beyond its wildest dreams. I get to have conversations with people that I respect all around the world on a regular basis that make me better. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk also about some of the perils and the pitfalls of communication, such as conflicts and overcoming challenges within these, because frankly, no one is immune to challenges and conflicts when it comes to communication. And again, it's not always because I have malice intended. I can walk into a meeting. Maybe I fail to read the room. Maybe I am not outcome focused and driven. Maybe somebody has a very strong personality and maybe, we clash for whatever reason. Or frankly, sometimes maybe there's a preconceived notion that somebody's going to be a certain way. So we come in with our guard up or our dukes up. There's a lot of reasons why miscommunications and conflicts can happen. How do you recommend, Richard, preventing these as best you can? But when they happen, how do you diffuse them? How do you quell them? And how do you prevent them going forward?
Well, a couple of things is always for me, I take notes. I'm a vehement note taker. As we've been talking, I've been taking notes and really taking a pause. People feel like they immediately have to respond. You don't have to. Taking that pause and that beat, even telling the person, can I just have 30 seconds to ponder what you just gave me? Because that's a lot to take in. It allows them to go, wow, he's really thinking about what I just threw at him. And that pause gives you a chance to allow your blood pressure to just kind of get a hold of yourself. But then, even more importantly, it allows you to gather your thoughts and gives you a chance to respond with the right thoughts and the right intent.
Beautiful. Absorb and find out more. I find
Mm,
too, asking questions. And if something hits you in a way that you didn't anticipate, tell me a little bit more about that.
yeah, that's
Be
just what I wrote
curious.
down.
Yeah, be curious in these meetings, especially when something goes, where you perceive it to be sideways. I mean, ultimately with communication, and especially as a leader, you're earning the right to influence people. That's all it is. And, everybody's got different experiences with change. Some people are deathly afraid of it. Some people are just, a little bit allergic to it. But I think ultimately you're wanting to influence and de-risk that change and de-risk that decision. When it comes down to it, leadership and effective communication go hand in hand. Being a great leader is not just coming in and, barking orders, telling people what to do. You're going on a journey together. You've got to earn the right to take them on this journey with you and go together in that journey. And things are going to hit you that are going to be unexpected. I've had situations, and frankly, some of my favorite leadership experiences have been situations where it took a while to earn the trust of somebody that worked for me. They were a little skittish at first to really engage and let me into their business. But guess what? Once I did earn that right through diligently showing up, seeking to support them, offering constructive feedback, but being valuable in those situations, we have some of the best relationship outcomes as a result of that I could fathom, even better than the ones that were like open kimono right out of the gate. And so I think that's the thing that we're ultimately looking to earn and learn when it comes to communication.
Well, I'll just add on to that. You said a couple of key words there: trust, which is absolutely the invaluable equation in communication, but adding value. When you add value in a conversation, when you add value as a leader, when you add value when you're in the room as a salesperson, as a leader, all of a sudden the doors open. And that is when your communication starts widening the opportunities. That's when the confidence starts coming. That's when you're able to start using your voice and start using that platform, and you're able to use that storytelling that we talked about earlier. And you maybe even can share a time when you failed, maybe show some vulnerability, and by all means, show that authenticity of who you are as a human being.
I love
Man,
that.
Carson,
That's
thanks for.
fantastic, Richard. Yeah, I mean, look, I've spent a career trying to figure out how do I help the people I touch win? What's the value that I bring to them? And sometimes it's not obvious right out of the gate. Sometimes it might be a connection that I make that isn't me. But whatever it is, we're ultimately looking to earn the right to be that trusted source or that trusted advisor. And that comes through great communication and staying at the pulse of what matters to the people that you want to matter to. And so no matter what it is, whether it's, great times, where business is booming and everybody's winning and everybody's patting themselves on the back, all the way to the challenging times where they're ambiguous, uncertain, we're navigating tough terrain, that becomes all the more important to cut right through it and communicate. When I get a negative piece of feedback or when I get a bad report or something comes down that is tough news for people, I encourage everyone listening, hit it head on. When we had tough situations in my career as a leader that were announced by our company, we would huddle as a team immediately. Embrace these moments to communicate. Even when the message is uncertain, you can
Oh,
be the voice of clarity amidst the noise. and amidst the storm. And I think those are the types of moments where we can really shine. It's easy to communicate during times where everybody's happy and winning and patting themselves on the back. What is challenging and what a great communicator will do will seize the opportunities to communicate clarity amidst the storm.
Well, I love these conversations, and you're exactly right. For me, it all comes down to, I think this gets attributed to Tony Robbins, but it was actually a Missouri gentleman, I believe, that actually first said this. Mark Twain said, there's two great days in your life: the day that you're born and the day that you figure out why you were born. And as a great leader, being that communicator, whether it's in good times, delivering a great message of inspiration, or during the uncertain times when things aren't going so well, that you've got to be a great communicator then. Either way, you can't be that great leader without being that great communicator. So I would encourage all of your listeners, including the two of us, to become better communicators each and every day.
No better place to wrap up than with the great Mark Twain. So from two Missourians who are striving to be that great, signing off today. But great topic, Richard. I always enjoy our chats, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on the value of communication.
Oh my goodness! And like you said, I love recording with you, but man, some of our best conversations aren't recorded, and man, those are precious to me as well. Thanks, Carson.
Great. We'll see you next time, my friend.
All right.